Welcome GRD131, Graphic Design 1, to ex7, Logo Personalities, and this is under Unit 8 for Spring 2021. And you're going to go down to Unit 8, and this should be the second exercise. And this is the exercise that you would click on when you submit it. But before you do that, you're going to click on my shared link that I gave to you to start this off. But in addition, there's also a worksheet that you could click on with some instructions. As long as I'm here, let me just click on this so that it opens up in a new window. And then while that's opening up, I'll go back and I'll go to Documents and Resources, and I'll open up the PDF, and it's under Unit 8, and there it is. And what it says here, there's only 2 steps. It said create logos in Gravit, and I have a file for you to work on. And kind of like we were looking at that exercise where we were looking at what makes a logo, a text logo, we're going to kind of use that, and you're going to make your own logos. We have 5 companies here. Financial services, a preschool and daycare, a fuel oil company, sports bar and grill, and a salon and day spa. And the reason I'm using these is because it's logo personality. So obviously all these companies have their own type of personality. Financial services would be a little more businesslike, a little more conservative. Kids Place might be a little more playful, a little more friendly looking. Johnson's Fuel Oil Company might be a little more masculine, a little more rugged looking. You know, it's a logo that's going to be on the side of an oil truck, something like that. Same thing with Willie Joe's Sports Bar and Grill. It could be more playful, more fun, a little more looser. Escape might be a little more on the feminine side. Salon and Day Spa might have more scripty fonts, things like that. So that's why I have this as logo personalities, and I want you to get used to just kind of matching up fonts, and also, just like the previous exercise, making something stand out and something recede a little bit, making sure that the combinations work. So when you go here, I didn't do anything for you, and there's only 5 here. And I'm logged in already, so I don't have to log in, so I'm just going to close that thing, but I am still going to save it, so I'm going to go Save to Cloud As, and I'm going to save it in my GRD131 folder, and I'll replace last F with my last name, first initial, and remember, there's no save button, so you just have to hit Enter, and now it's your file to work on. And I'll start with this one up here, and I'll just do one as an example. And again, you could do yours completely different. You don't have to do it like mine, but keep in mind, I would start with Stoddard and Dodd, and I would look for a font. Now, if you're not sure what font you want to start with, I always, Crimson Pro is a good one to always start with. I might look for something a little different and say, let me try Una, modern looking serif. That might work, but I'd want to make it bold. You got to be careful with the modern serifs because they have very fine lines. But because I'm doing this part of it, and remember the red is on, so it's auto scale font, and I'm going to change this to Una. So I'm going to go here and just type in Una. There's 2 N's in Una, and it didn't change to Una. Let me try that again. Una, and it usually has to be at the bottom, and there it is. Then you want to click on it, and there it is. And I'll make it bold because there is a bold, and I'll make it bigger. I'll grab on this red line down here, and remember, you don't have to hold shift. So there's my Stoddard and Dodd. I'll zoom in a little bit more, and that's pretty nice. I mean, there's some fine lines, but not too fine. Now, I wouldn't want to use the same font on the financial services, because those lines would get very thin. But I might want to use something like a sans serif. I think on the previous exercise I did something like that. So this is in Open Sans, and I'd stay away from Open Sans. That's kind of a generic starting font, although it's not bad. But I'd look at my Gravit fonts and say what would be something nice. And I could say Archivo Narrow. I could try something like that. Catamaran, Tajawal, Roboto, whatever. You could try one of these. And I'm going to try Archivo Narrow and see how that looks. So I'm going to select this, and there's Archivo Narrow. And it looks nice. It's a little on the heavier side, even though it's not bold. And what I mean is their weights are getting closer. If I make this any bigger, if I made this like this big, and I put them here, they would kind of compete, because one doesn't really stand out that much. I need this to be lighter. Now, I might go here and say, well, why don't I use a lighter font? Well, it's the lightest font. But how can you make this lighter? Well, I can make it smaller. So let me go smaller. Now, that's okay, except it doesn't look really good centered when it's that small, because there's a lot of gap on either side. Now you could, say, oh, I'm going to move that there and do something like that. You could, but what I like to do sometimes is change the tracking. That's this character spacing down here. And In the previous video, I mentioned you don't have to do it very much. Like 0.1 is a lot. So if you start dragging on this, it's going to go crazy. Even if you hold Option, which slows it down, it's still going to go crazy. If I hold Option here and go up, right away it goes up. 0.1 is a lot. And you can see it even broke out of the box. So that's why you have to hit this auto width here. And you can see how wide it is now, just at 0.1. And so let me double click in here and just make it 0.05. That would be half of that. Now that looks a little bit better. And it's almost the same width as Stoddard and Dodd, but maybe I'll go and make it a little bit smaller. So I'll just grab it here and make it smaller. Now there's an issue with the dot there at the end. It becomes a little bit of a problem, but don't worry about that too much right now. We just want to make this look like a logo. So I'm going to make it kind of the same width, and I have to keep putting those auto back on. Sometimes you might want to just go in here and just change the font here, but that's a good size. I want them the same width. Now, right there, that's not bad. You could leave it like that. That's a nice combination of a bold serif font and a light sans serif font, and we actually made it lighter by spreading out the character tracking, or the character spacing. The tracking is the spacing between the letters, and it's a narrow font. So because it's a longer, we have like 3 words here, that helps a little bit. So now we have this standing out, this being lighter. And if you wanted to do something else, I mentioned this before. Now I tell you, you don't have to do a line, and then the first thing I do is draw a line. But you could go here and draw a line. Remember, you don't want it any heavier than the font of that sans serif down there. So I'm just going to draw a line across. And I may actually want to make 2 lines. Because remember, you can put 1 line and they kind of divide and unite in a way. Like that could kind of work. But another thing you could do is copy this thing and kind of make a little like box for it. But it's an open box, meaning you could put the font kind of in here and kind of nudge it up. And now it kind of looks nice. Now it has its own little place. This has its own little look to it because it's very bold, distinctive font. And now this has its own little, it's like in its own little shelf here, its own little box down here. You got to be careful selecting these that you don't select the top one. And you could always select things over here. And I'm just going to nudge the whole thing up a little bit, not too close. But make sure you have this centered up and down. Now, I'm not saying to use this font. You could try other fonts. You could try other sans serif fonts. You could maybe put this in something else, or you know, a nice Volkhorn or something like that. You don't have to use these fonts, but this is just an idea. I probably want to use something conservative for this, for Stoddard and Dodd, and I don't want to use something real wide, so that looks okay. So that would be my first font, and I would say, yeah, that looks pretty good. That would work. Does it look good from far away? If I zoom out, can you still see it okay? And yeah, I can see it okay. It's not breaking up too much. The fine lines don't look bad, so at small sizes, it looks okay. So that's what you want to do. So that's my first one, and you can do what you want for that. And then, obviously, as you move on, we have some playful ones here, so this will give you an opportunity to kind of try out some things, but be careful with getting too crazy with, you know, those Comic Sans kids kind of fonts. You don't always have to do that. You don't always have to make a preschool logo look like some kid drew it in crayons. I mean, sometimes that's okay. Maybe you want to do Kids Place in that, but then do this in a nice kind of readable font after that. So you're going to do that to these 5 companies: Kids Place, Johnson Brothers, Willie Joe's. That should be Willie. If you see it, it says Will Joe's. Change that to be Willie. So I'll have to change that for you, but it's meant to be Willie Joe's, not Will Joe's. So just double click in there, put your cursor in there, and put Willie. We want that to be Willie Joe's. So if it's still saying Will, change it to be Willie. And this will be Escape Salon and Day Spa. So have fun with these. Once you're done, you know the routine. Make sure you save it. Make sure the synchronizing is done. And then share it. Make sure that wheel stops. Change this to developer. Then hit copy. Then go back. You're going to go to Unit 8 for Spring 2021. And you're going to click on the assignment link, not the shared link. You're going to go here to the ex7 logo personalities. And you're just going to add a comment, and you know the routine. Click on the link. Paste the link. Change this to new window. Hit save again, and you're done. So that's ex7 logo personalities. Have fun with that. Take your time with it. Work on some things. Really kind of get familiar with your fonts and nudging things and all the subtleties that are involved with that. So have fun with ex7 logo personalities.